Okay, welcome back to part two of German insurance. My name is Arielle Tucker. I'm the owner of Connected Financial Planning. We are a fee-only financial planning firm for US expats living in or moving to Germany. And today I am joined with Dijana, and she is here from Barmer Insurance, which is one of the largest, is it the largest, maybe, public insurance providers in Germany. And she has come in, and this is our second session actually, to just kind of break down and demystify a bit how German and public health insurance works for us. So I really appreciate you taking the time. We have part one. We'll be sure to link that. We did part one that was about an hour. And so we're coming back for part two to finish up the rest of the presentation because we just realized there's just so much to cover in this topic.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to get right into it, starting with the private health insurance coverage. So private health insurance is customizable, but you are kind of limited to how much you can customize it. So there's things that you have to include in your health insurance. So that's like your dental, there's specific things that have to be covered. However, the things that you can choose to kind of whether you want that included or not are things whether you want your own private bedroom, so such as the single bed, you want you and maybe just one other person with you. There's a lot of people who don't want to be alone. And then, or you can just get whatever is standard in just what you would get in the public health insurance system. So that's up to 4 people in a bedroom. You can also have the access to the head doctor covered. So for example, what that means is a lot of people ask what this means is I'll give myself as an example. So when I was pregnant and I was going to give birth, I'm publicly insured and I had an additional private health insurance coverage on top of my public. And we discussed that earlier, that that's something that you can also do when you are in the public to get these kind of additional benefits. So I had the option to get access to the head doctor, and basically she was the head gynecologist of the department. So she's the one that was assisting me with the birth and everything along those lines. And I also had the option of the anesthesiologist that was coming in. So she was also the head of the department, and she was the one that was giving me my epidural. A lot of they just have a lot more experience. So if some kind of complication happens, I would have felt a lot more it was just for my peace of mind that I felt more comfortable that I had someone with a lot more experience and credentials. Not to say that the other doctors aren't, it's just they're kind of the best of the best. You can get additional coverage on things like alternative medicine, and what that states is that kind of the over-the-counter prescription. So normally they're not covered by any insurances. Some private health insurances have that option to where they'll cover over-the-counter medication as well. Or if you need things like osteopathy or things like that, that's not kind of the traditional way of medicine, then they're willing to get that covered. And one thing to mention is that coverage is also very different depending on which health insurance you're insured with. So not all premium coverages are the same. So it's also really important to look at all of your options. There's about 32, if I'm not mistaken, private health insurances here in Germany. And they all give very different options, and not all of their, let's say, premium options are the same, and not all of their basic options are the same. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Another thing
Is there a platform or a marketplace to be able to kind of compare different offers between the 32 different private health insurance coverage
so
providers?
what most people use is Check24, but there's also a lot of insurance brokers, and they work with all of them. Right. And so when you have, let's say, a consultation with them, they'll sit down with you and they'll go through kind of not all 32, but based off what your needs are, and they'll kind of lead you of what might be the best for you. So that's always really good to have, is to talk to an insurance broker where they can kind of lead you to the right. Check24 is also what most people use, and then you can kind of compare the coverages and things like that. But also having a good insurance broker, they can sit down with you. They usually have a system. That's what I had when I used to work in private health insurances. So we had a database to where all of the options were available of all the private health insurances. And then when I sit down with the client, we kind of go through based on their needs, how long they're planning to stay, um, what's going to be important to them, and things like that. And based off of that, we were able to kind of narrow down this list and then just go based off of that and look at kind of the coverages that are available to them. And then, of course, if there's certain recommendations, because as an independent insurance broker, you work with all of them, but you also have experience with all of them. So you kind of know which ones work a little bit better, which ones don't. So that's always, there's a lot of brokers that some of them just have a contract, let's say, or an agreement with maybe one or two. But if they're an independent insurance broker, then they have pretty much access to all of them.
Okay. And I think you mentioned this before, but with private insurance, obviously it's not family coverage, it's individual coverage. Even if you have children, they all have their own policy, they all have their own
Right.
premium. Do you ever see families where maybe part of the family is covered by public insurance and part of the family is covered by private insurance for some reason?
Um, Yes, yes, sometimes. So, let's say there's a family of three, both the mom and the dad are working, and let's say the dad wants to have the private insurance because, let's say it's more, he's going to get a little bit more of a coverage. It's going to be financially make sense, so he doesn't have to contribute to the public. He's earning high, so it'll be maybe a lower price range for him to be privately insured, but the mom and the child stay in the public. Because it'll just make more financial sense for both of them to stay in the public. Although most families like to kind of stick together, so if one's public, the other is public, or they're all private. It just depends on the situation, and it could be also depending on how much both of the parents are earning, right? So let's say one is earning over this minimum amount that they have to make. So let's say one is earning over the 74,000 per year, and one might be earning, let's just say, just the 70,000 per year. So one of them doesn't even qualify for the private. But usually families kind of like to stick together in that sense. So one is not preferred over the other. We did have a little bit of a case where the child just did not qualify for the public due to certain for the private, sorry, due to certain health conditions. So the mom still wanted the private for herself, and she asked if the child could independently be insured in the public. So there's certain things that it just depends on the family kind of dynamic and the health status of each. So it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen in certain cases.
Okay, great. Is there anything else on this slide that you want to cover, or should we keep going?
I think that's pretty much as term as the coverage goes, and I think anything after that we'll kind of get into a little bit more in depth of kind of future and kind of what can affect these coverages and things like that.
Okay. So
This
so
is
you work for Barmer, so we'll just transparently say this again. You work for Barmer, and so this
yeah.
is just kind of a highlight of the Barmer. So I'll let you breeze through these quickly.
Right. So all public health insurance, we all have to cover the same things, anything that's medically necessary. We always kind of differ from each other just depending on the kind of service that we have. Like I said, Barmer, we do specialize in the expat unit a lot. So that's where we kind of stand out. We also have additional benefits. So a lot of people that are looking to go in the private maybe don't qualify or can't. So we do have certain things to kind of just the benefits of being with Barmers to set ourselves apart. And this is kind of maybe beyond coverage, but we do have the teledoctor app. So that's, let's say you can't get in with your house doctor, you're sick, something's going on, you can call a doctor, do a video call, and if you need something, they'll let you know. They can write a prescription, they can write a sick note for you. Let's say if you need a kind of specialist for whatever you're dealing with at the moment, they'll refer you to a different doctor. And a lot of the times, and people say this, that waiting periods can be really long in the public health
Yeah.
insurance to see a specialist. We do have kind of a shortened waiting list, so they can get you in to see a specialist with a shorter waiting time, and that's I think a really nice benefit to have, so you don't have to go through the process alone. And I think that's especially important for expats, because I remember my first time I had to go in and see a specialist, and then I went to make my appointment and they told me 6 months, and I was like, I could die in 6 months. Like, what do you mean? I wasn't going to die, but 6 months is a really, really long time. So we do have that option. We also have an app that you can use, so you can manage everything through the app. There's a bonus system already set in through the app, so you can earn kind of cash rewards or get a little bit extra coverage on certain things. And there are certain requirements that you have to complete. So let's say get a preventative check. If you're, let's say, being active, joining a gym, you can get kind of points towards that and earn some money back. So that's that Barmer bonus program where you can get to up to 150 euros cash back per year. Free family insurance, that's by all public health insurances, but we also do include that. So you're not paying extra for any dependent family members, so kids, or if you have a spouse that's not working, so they're automatically on your health insurance. Doctor Finder as well. So basically, we have a site set in place to where you can find a doctor in your preferred language near your location. So always helpful to have. So it doesn't just have to be in English. It can be. We have, I think, over 15 languages set up to so it can be Arabic, Serbian, Croatian, uh, French, kind of whatever is your preferred language. Clinic Finder as well, just to help find a hospital or a clinic near you, kind of one that might work best for you and your needs. And we do have the English service hotline. That's available 24/7. Usually when people sign up, so let's say, for example, you signed up through me, I'm always available, but of course I have my working hours, and after that, you can't reach me. So if it's something that you need as an emergency, you can always call the English service hotline. And then traveling, so we do provide emergency coverage within the European Union. So if you want to go on vacation and you get sick on the vacation, even if it's just a cold, you want to go ahead and visit a doctor there, that Barmer will cover anything. Or if any accidents happen, of course, while you're traveling within the European Union. Outside of the European Union, you do have to have a travel insurance with you.
That's a really great benefit. That's something that people ask about a
Yeah.
lot. Obviously, we still recommend additional travel insurance since so many of our clients are traveling back to the US on a regular basis. And obviously the US is
Yeah.
not in the EU.
Yeah,
Uh,
for the US is just very specific. Even with
mhm.
private health insurances, there's a lot of health insurances that will cover like international travel. So you're covered any emergency appointments. Some actually might even do planned appointments. The US and Switzerland are those very specific locations where it's very limited, and that's just because of the high costs of the treatments.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of a not so much of a benefit, let's say, whether public or private, because the US is a lot more expensive when it comes to treatments. So it's always important to get an additional travel health insurance.
Yeah, it's something that we make sure our clients understand what their coverage is. If you don't ask questions or you don't read the terms and you think you have it, and then you end up in the US, there are a lot of rules oftentimes for travel insurance. And this is kind of very generally just things to watch out that we've seen. For example, if you're a US citizen and you're traveling in the US and then you go and get care in the US, that can cause issues because they don't want
Yeah,
basically US citizens traveling back to their home country to get service, like plan services. If you are traveling for more than like 30 days, that can also be an issue, right? So if you're planning on spending the summer, back with your parents or family and friends, you may exceed what your coverage is, or they may have
yeah,
something where they say like they will fly you back to Germany and you can get your treatment. So it is just
Yeah.
really important to understand like what you're signing up for and what you're actually.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of private insurances do have that option, but it's always important before, let's say you have a planned treatment. Although I don't know a lot of insurances that are going to approve a planned treatments in the US. Usually they approve when it is the same cost or a lower cost than in Germany. And that's just not the case with the US because most treatments are going to be at higher costs. So I doubt that any health insurance would approve. There might be, but it's always important to ask. Even if you're reading the contract, it might not even be stated in the contract, like we'll cover up to this amount. Ask. You can always ask. If you did it through an insurance broker, they can ask for you. There's a lot of them that specialize in expats, so they'll do it for you. Or if, let's say, you're speaking in Germany, you want to contact them, just ask beforehand. Don't make the mistake of just going and doing it by yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is a good slide. Price increases.
Price increases. I know there's always a lot of questions about price increases, both in the public and the private. And I had this a lot when I was working in the private, that people are like, well, there's always in the private, you know, the older you get, the more expensive it gets, and then public doesn't increase. Not true. The public does increase their the price of their health insurance. It's usually a steady small price increases, usually once per year. Um, Sometimes it can happen twice. We've seen public health insurances that increased at the start of January, and then let's say they did a recalculation, and then in April they did another price increase. Um, Usually it's a small percentage, but it still makes a difference. It still makes a difference for people. Okay. Why why the prices of increase? That's because the increasing price of medical costs and medical care and things like that. So, you know, just natural inflation of things, that's going to increase the price of the public health insurance. And they, you know, the public health insurances also can't be losing money. And if medical costs are more expensive, then of course they have to increase the price of the public health insurance as well. So as of this year, all, if I'm not mistaken, all public health insurances did increase. Some once per year, some twice. Barmer only increased at the starting of January, and we're pretty good for this year. There was a year during Corona where there was no increase in price, so it was pretty stable for 2-3 years, and then once Corona was over, they saw a little bit more of a jump. Um, Private health insurance, so they tend to have sharp price increases, but less often. So what that means is it doesn't depend, it's not dependent on your age. It's also things of like inflation, medical costs, also just the stability of the private health insurance. Some have been around for a really, really long time, and they're a little bit more stable, and maybe you started out with a higher price. So let's say you want premium coverage on two different health insurances. One is, let's say, 800 euros per month. The other one is 600 euros. Well, in long term, this 800 euro one might not increase so much. You're already starting at a pretty high rate, and they're really good at deducing kind of how much it should cost. This lower one might be like a new premium package. They're a little bit lower cost. So they're still adjusting the price, and you might see the price adjustments. When price adjustments happen within private health insurance, in public as well, you are able to switch to a different health insurance provider. So those are kind of the things that you do have to consider. With private health insurances, usually most contracts are 2 years and then you can switch. But that's not your goal, is to keep on switching, because when you're switching private health insurance providers, you're also starting at a new entry age, and that's going to affect the price. So when you're, let's say if you want to do private, you want to make sure you're choosing a good one that's going to keep you there for long term, because that's where you're going to see the most benefits. With the public, like I said, price increases happen. The difference in prices are not huge. There might be like 1 to 2% difference in price, and and if you're employed, that 1 to 2% is still split with you and the employer. So that I just wanted to kind of cover that in terms of price increases. So they do increase in both. It's just One is kind of steady every year. It does happen unless maybe certain things prevent it. Like let's say the Corona period was just overall kind of messy in general, so they didn't increase it, but then they started increasing it yearly, and that's usually what happens with the public. Private, you might see some health insurances don't increase their prices for, let's say, 5, 6 years, and then all of a sudden you see a huge jump. So let's say maybe €100 difference. In the long term, it's all balanced out, so there's increases in both. I think what's most important is to know how long you plan on being in Germany, and that's where you're going to see the most difference on what's going to be beneficial for you, whether the public or the private. Because usually, I want to say the private is not so financially beneficial for people that are planning and staying here on long term. And that's mainly because you have to pay the private health insurances all by yourself.
Yep. Makes sense. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for explaining that in so much detail. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it. So
And if
next we're
there's
going to get,
something, and
yeah.
no, I was just going to say, if there's something that was a little bit confusing, just let me know, and I'll clear that up. If it was confusing for you, then it might be confusing for other people.
I think it is just a confusing process. And I think what I found as we went through the process, the best thing is to start looking at numbers. Like starting out with like if you're just like
Mhm.
going to a check 24 and just starting to run numbers on your own unique situation and then overlay
Yeah.
that with a conversation with an expert, with a broker, or with like someone like you who could actually start to explain what all this means in like plain
Yeah.
English. I think that's really important. I think the other really important thing for expats, especially US expats, like if you're coming and you have literally no idea like how German bureaucracy works, how to speak German, you are going to find it
Yeah.
really overwhelming to navigate this process. And so paying a little bit more to make sure that you have access to an English speaker who can help you navigate this, I think is completely worth it, because otherwise you're paying for something that you may feel too intimidated to actually use.
Yeah. And what's really nice is usually we'll let people know, like last year it was this much, this year it's going to be this much. We can calculate how much you will be paying for it. So let's say if you're interested in, let's say, Barmer, you're like, hey, I'm going to be earning this and this amount. Can you tell me how much I will be paying? Of course, we can sit there and calculate it, see how much you will contribute, how much the employer will contribute, or if you're just paying by yourself, we can work out the contribution rates. Private health insurances as well. There's a whole, like, they have, if you're sitting down with a broker, they have the history of the price increases for each health insurance, each tariff that they have. So you can ask, and they will sit down with you and look at the price increases, and they'll show you. So if prices is a huge factor, if you just are looking at coverage, well, but they're going to offer you what they offer you. So I think it's always just important to ask the questions. And I know I find this also with myself. It's always good to write down the questions before the appointment. Yeah, because sometimes you get into a conversation and you lose your train of thought, or you just forget to ask some questions. You're like, oh, I wish I would have asked this. But yeah.
Yeah, great point. Okay, so talk to us about the application process.
Yeah. So with Barmer or public health insurance in general, it's a pretty simple process. So you fill out an application. It's quite short. There's an additional application for a family insurance. So if you have people that are dependent on you, you fill out a separate form for them as well. The information that you have to give is like, who's your employer? Are you self-employed? When do you need to start? So it's pretty simple questions that you can ask. Once once someone has registered you in the system, you'll receive a welcome letter, and then it'll ask you to submit a picture for your electronic insurance card. So basically with this card, what you will do is anytime you go to the doctor, you put in the card into the card reader, and then the public health insurance pays directly to the doctor. They also have your information of like your house address and things like that, your date of birth, just simple information. But basically, it's mainly for the payment system so that they know that the public health insurance can pay directly to the healthcare provider. Um, And then in terms of payment, you don't have to worry about, because most of the time, if you are employed, it's going to go through your pay slips. So deduction is going to happen automatically from your gross income, and you will see that on your pay slip. Okay. Private health insurance. So the application process is a little bit more confusing, and that's just because there is that health checkup that comes with it. So it might last a little bit longer. Okay. So you have to fill out the application.
Do you have to
and with
go
the
see
application,
like a nurse or someone? Like, does someone actually have to check your health? Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. There's some that don't require. There's a couple that don't require that health checkup. But most of the time, especially if you're coming outside of the European Union, especially the US, then they're going to require a health checkup. It's not like a super extensive, most of the time they won't ask for any blood work or anything like that, but it is like a physical check to where, heartbeat, blood pressure, weight, and things like that. It's going to play a role. So when you do have the application first, there's going to be a health questionnaire with it. You do have to answer it honestly. So a lot of the times people lie, or they don't see something as a health issue, but it ends up being a health issue. You have to answer honestly, because what might happen is you go to the doctor and you tell the doctor, hey, I actually do have this health issue. Well, when they bill you later and you submit it to the health insurance, they're going to find out and they're going to be like, wait, when you filled this out, this wasn't part of the agreement. And they can
Mhm.
kick you out. And then you're kind of left with, what do I do next? You do have to submit proof of income along with a visa. So they do require a 13-month minimum visa. There's some that don't, that might do a little bit more for expats, but a lot of them do require a 13-month visa, and you have to submit proof of income. That's whether you're going to be freelancing, self-employed, or employed. If you're employed, you have to submit a job contract. If you're self-employed or freelancing, then bank account statements, if you have any contracts coming up, anything along those lines where they can see how much money is coming in. The health check, so you do have to see a healthcare provider. It doesn't have to be a specialist or anything, just a regular family doctor is completely fine. So they're going to do just a standard physical health check.
Okay, let's jump
And then,
into how so we've gotten our insurance, we've done the application process, the health check if
Mhm.
necessary. What happens now once we actually have our
Right.
insurance?
Right. And I think I might have messed up this slide a little bit. So this is still going, this first point is still going with the public. So every payment is completed through the health insurance card. So the public health insurance will pay directly to the healthcare institution. You will never receive a bill when you are publicly insured. For the most part, you will never receive a bill. When you have to pay out of pocket is if there's certain things that are not covered by the public health insurance. When it is not covered by your public health insurance, the healthcare provider who's ever recommending this treatment or something like that, they have to let you know that it is not covered by the public health insurance and how much it's going to cost before you approve of the treatment. So it's up to you whether you want to pay this extra or not. If it's something that's medically necessary, it's going to be covered. But let's say you're going in for a treatment. What can I say? Something
What
that
about like acupuncture or
ultrasounds,
ultrasound? Okay.
acupuncture, ultrasounds. I'll do ultrasounds because
Yeah.
um, or acupunctures in that. Acupunctures are generally not covered. It's considered one of those things that are alternative medicine, so you don't really need it, but it might be beneficial for you. So let's say a doctor might say acupuncture. I would recommend you do this maybe once a month, but it's not covered by your public health insurance. You can go see this person. It'll maybe cost about 100 euros per session, let's say, or an ultrasound. And the ultrasound is when you go for like the preventative once a year checkup. So some public health insurances don't cover the costs. Most of them don't cover the cost for that. It's like 40 euros. But the doctor will be like, hey, if you want, we can also do an ultrasound just to make sure everything's okay. The cost is 40, 50 euros if you want to go ahead and do it. So it's up to you whether you want to pay that 40 or 50 euros. If it's something like, let's say the doctor is like, okay, I might suspect that something is going on, then you don't have to pay for the ultrasound. But if it's just like a preventative checkup, then like the ultrasound won't be covered. But they'll always have to let you know in advance if it's not covered and how much it's going to cost. And they have to know. It doesn't matter. They have to approve. They have to work with all the public health insurances, and they will know how everything works. Okay. And then private health insurances. It's a little bit different because they will never pay directly to the institution. Sometimes maybe directly to a hospital, but that's only sometimes, so I don't want to advocate for that. But most of the time, you will receive the bill. Okay? So you go, you get your medical checkup, everything's fine. Few weeks later, you're going to get the bill. You're technically supposed to submit the bill. No, you're supposed to pay for the bill and then submit it to the public health insurance or the private health insurance.
Yep.
Get them, to the private health insurance, and they will reimburse you that money back. So it's similar to the U.S. system when you're dealing with things that aren't covered by the health insurances. So you're going to get a bill, you have to pay
It's
for
a
it,
lot
and
more
then
paperwork. I think that's the thing.
yeah,
And you have to stay on top of it. You have to be really
you do.
organized. You have to make
Yeah,
sure, okay, yes, I submitted this bill. I submitted this bill this date. Did that money actually come back into my account? Did I get
yeah,
reimbursed? Is something missing? Like you kind of almost have to build like your own Excel spreadsheet with like tracking dates of
yeah,
submission, dates of receipt, because
yeah.
especially if you're a
And
family and private, it can be a lot of
yeah.
paperwork.
It can. They do have apps. They do have apps. So when you are submitting, you can submit through your app, and then you can check on the status and things like that. So that they make it a
Okay,
little
so it's
bit
gotten
less.
better.
But there is
Okay.
it has gotten better. It has gotten better. Germany's not so technologically advanced, and they're really fond of paperwork. But even then, you still have to be on top of things. Make sure you're getting the reimbursements back. Making sure that you're paying on time. They do always give you a little bit of leeway, but make sure that you're paying on time and things like that.
We've got just a few minutes
Switch,
left and a few slides, so I'm trying to
yeah,
keep us moving
yeah,
at
no,
a good clip
no
today.
problem. So switching from public to private and vice versa. So you can always switch from the public to private. When you sign up with the public health insurance, you do have to be with them for 12 months. And after that, you can switch to the private if you want. Okay. If you've been longer with them than 12 months, then there's just a 2-month termination notice and you're good. So when you are initially starting with a public, you still have to be with them for 12 months. After the 12 months, you have a 2-month termination notice that you have to give them, and then you can
Is
switch
that
to the public.
any time throughout the year?
Private.
Like to get off of
Yeah,
public. So if it's like
yeah,
February, you give them 2 months notice and then you can switch in 2 months to
exactly.
private. So it's not like a
Yeah,
certain
yeah.
date during the year. Okay.
No, no. So you can always make that switch. When you are switching from private to public, almost impossible. So when you're in private, you're pretty much stuck in there unless you are going to earn below the threshold. Okay. The threshold of this year, it's around the 74,000 euros per year. So let's say next year you're earning 75,000, and next year they increase this threshold to where you have to earn a minimum of 78,000 euros. Then you can go back to the public. But if you're earning at a pretty high income, you're in the private, and you're like, I don't like the private. This is too confusing. I want to switch to the public. It's not going to happen.
What about if you are making 100,000 euros, so you are eligible for
Mhm.
private, and then you decide, you know what, I don't want to work 100% anymore. I only want to work 50%. So technically, you only
Mhm.
are earning 50,000 euros. Can you
Yeah.
switch at that point?
Yeah. It the incomes, it's going to be based solely off of income, because if you're only going to be earning 50,000, then you are mandatory basically to be in the public health insurance system. So we mandatorily have to insure you. Whether when you are earning above this certain amount, then you are basically, it's your free of choice where you want to be. And if you want to be in the private, well, you're just going to be in the private. You can't go back into the public because you
Yeah.
already chose the private on your own free will.
I think it's a really good segue into then what happens during retirement. Like if you've been
Yeah.
in private during your working years and now you're retired and you're making below the threshold because you're just
Right.
relying on maybe a small pension, how does that work?
Right. So you still have to pay for health insurance, whether you're in the private or in the public. A lot of people are like, yeah, but I'm in the public, and when I have to go to retirement, I won't have to pay for my health insurance. No, you'll still have to pay for it. Of course, you're not going to have to pay for it the amount that you're paying for it now. So it'll go directly off of your pension. Your pension usually won't be as high as how much you were earning when you were working. Okay. Um, so they're going to look at how much you're getting from your pension. They're going to deduct that amount, and then the state will cover half. Okay. When you are privately insured, you have to pay everything for yourself.
But could you switch from private to public when you retire?
No, no,
So
no.
you're basically
There,
like the last year of your working years, if you're on private, you are locked in to private for the rest of your life.
yeah,
There's no going back.
exactly,
And what
exactly.
about if thinking about US expats, you have maybe you only worked in Germany for 10 years, right? So your German
Mhm.
pension is going to be relatively small, but you worked in the US for 20 years. And so you have, your US 401k or a US
Yeah.
pension. Is income being calculated to determine what you would pay for public insurance?
Technically it should, technically, but people always work their ways around that, and that's something that you really have to ask maybe a tax advisor and things like that on how that would work. Um, from my knowledge, when I worked in the private, yes, technically, because they're going to be looking at kind of all of the income that you have. Now there is this agreement between Germany and the US um, in regards to the pension, and I'm not 100% sure how that works. So I don't want to give the false information if they're only going to look at it from the German pension or overall the US pension, the 401k and the German combined.
Yeah, because I think with I'm just, if you do, you can, maybe if you do consider the US amount, because technically it would be taxable in
Right.
Germany, then who's covering the other half? The US would be
Right.
covering your German. The US doesn't cover
No,
anyone. So
no,
does
no,
Germany
and
pick that up? And that's kind of where I'm like, so I guess on a case by
yes,
case
well,
basis, you
Germany
need to
would
work
would
with your own accounting team to determine
right.
that.
Germany would pick that up. So whatever it is, like they're covering the half, because you are at one point or another you're contributing to the social security system here in Germany. And that's kind of what's most important. The private health insurance, you're not really contributing to the social security system if you're privately insured, right? You might have the public health insurance pension, and that's how you're contributing to the social security system. But in terms of the health insurance, if you're privately insured, you're not contributing to that social security system, so therefore you get no benefits from the social security system. Versus if you were already, then they're willing to cover the half already.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I
And there's
think the
always a maximum amount of how much you have to pay. Just keep that in mind for the public health insurance. And when you're retired, of course, it's a little bit of a lower amount as well. Um,
Yeah, it is
so
nice to have those like kind of known costs in retirement.
yeah. And basically that's the end of everything. This is just kind of a Barmer just a little bit tidbit about us. So we do provide our services and benefits, and we don't charge any extra costs. So if there's a consultation that you need with me or something like that, there's no additional costs. I'm on fixed pay, so I get what I get, and I don't charge anything. So that, and that's how all of my colleagues work. We do have, like I said, already mentioned this, that we do have a specialized expats team. So whether you're coming from the US or anywhere around the world, we do have specialized teams for that. We specifically look at how from what region most expats are coming from. And I have to say, in the last year or so, it's been a lot from the US. I also have a friend who has his own business, and he does pension planning and private health insurances. And he says there's been a lot of influx of people coming from the US into Germany. And that's pretty much it. We do have seminars and things like that where our clients can take part of if they want to know more, learn more. We do have those options available. And then the online seminars, we have that. We do have certain apps that they can use if they want. So
Are those all on your website, the seminars, the listed seminars and stuff? How would people find out about those seminars?
I would believe so. I believe so. A lot of them are on LinkedIn. So you can all, most of them are on LinkedIn. They do have them also on Instagram. So social media in general. Um, I don't know, not so much on the website, but on the social media, definitely. There's always something going on every week to, let's say, we're prioritizing, let's say, mental health or just physical activity in general. We tend to do that a lot. Or if there's something for like English speaking that we can kind of help you with, so we do have those offering as well.
Okay, so we've got your QR code and that goes to the website so you can learn more. And also Deanna, your
Yes.
email address is there so people can reach out to you
Yeah.
directly. I've
Yeah.
got my QR code for Instagram. We're trying to do more Instagram work. So I hope that you'll follow us. Deanna, thank you so
Yes.
much for coming back and finishing up the second half of German insurance. We spent so much time
Yeah.
covering this topic, and I think there's still so much more that we could talk about. So I just really appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, no problem. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed doing this and just creating the PowerPoint in general and just making sure that the information gets out there. One thing I wanted to say, the email is directly mine, and then the QR code, it's not directly for me, it's for the Barmer website in general. But if you have any questions, you can always just feel free to email me, and I'm pretty quick at responding. And and if you need anything else, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to stop our recording now. Thank you.